Hello and welcome to the Nation Asean Plus. I'm GERARD. In 2025, Malaysia will take the lead as chair of ASEAN at a time when global politics seem more unpredictable than ever. With Donald Trump back in the White House, there are questions around how the US will engage with the Asia Pacific, and ASEAN's unity will be more important than ever. Now, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has spoken about wanting to breathe new life into ASEAN, especially around regional security, economic cooperation, and strengthening ties between nations. Dr. A.T. KUMARARAJAH joins me to weigh in on Malaysia's upcoming role and his approximation on how ASEAN can navigate these challenges. Dato, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a very exciting week in the world. Of course, in Malaysia, every week is an exciting week. But let's just start with this. And I know you got a lot to say with this. And just so you know, shortly we'll be also hearing from Nordin Abdullah, who usually joins us right here on Bernama TV. We're going to be joining him via phone from Johor Bahru. In the meantime, Trump's back in office. There's a lot of speculation about what that might mean for ASEAN Asia. With Malaysia in the ASEAN chair, how do you think his re-election could shape ASEAN direction?
As far as ASEAN, Gerard, I mean, this is, I think we are very old school in a way we approach this whole thing. So even if the changes in presidency of US takes place, only thing that's going to intensify is not so much, we're just going to get the peripheral heat. But the main thing that will happen is between the trade war that goes on between China and US and us. We being very neutral, we being very strategic in that way, plus our joining into BRICS, or at least being a partner of BRICS at this point in time, will shape the way we navigate the next 1 year.
Right. So
2025 will navigate it in a very safe, neutral mode. You can see that he is, that Sri Anwar already congratulated Trump from China. So that's exactly how it is going to be. We are going to work with the economic benefits that we're going to get from China's investment in this part of the world, but not forgetting ASEAN itself. US is the biggest investor. US outnumbers China by a factor of 4 in terms of investments in this.
Factor of 4.
So US is number 1. They account for nearly a third of all investments coming into FDIs into the whole ASEAN region, and China is number 3, EU being the second one. So in that way, we will have to trade off that economic benefits against the security and geopolitical tension.
Now, I'd just like to digress a little bit and move to BRICS. So the optics saying with Malaysia saying that it wants to join BRICS, or giving signals that it wants to join BRICS.
Sort of a partner now.
Sort of a partner already. What does this mean? No, what would the guys in the US embassy be saying, or be trying to approximate at this point?
So again, we have to bring in the fact. No? So we talk about BRICS. Don't forget that when Trump 1.0, it's, I think, one of the first things that he did in January 2017 was actually sign US out of the TPP. So what is now CPTPP was TPP minus US now. So one of that first executive decisions he made was to pull US out of that huge trade bloc. If not, that would have been the world's largest trade bloc. Now, so us joining BRICS, to me, I see most of these trade blocs now, or whether it's political. I mean, ASEAN is near 60 years old. But despite that, now they all have become economic entities. They're not so much political entities as such. So I think we have also parked our or hedged our bets as far as BRICS is concerned, saying that the global south would become an economic region by itself, and I think we are hedging our bets as far as BRICS is concerned, because that's the way to grow. That's where the economic growth is. That's where US, China and India is really going to pick up in terms of 5 to 6% economic growth. Whereas as far as US is concerned, they're still one of our largest trading partners, so we will stay put. To me, I think Dr. Sri Anwar is very, very clear. In 2025, he will make sure that he uses all the experience and expertise that he has got, over the many years of political school that he has been to make sure that we will do very well.
You're right. So he's talking about giving ASEAN a fresh boost, especially around issues like South China Sea and Myanmar. Where do you see Malaysia playing a role in uniting ASEAN on these very, very tough issues? Now, when you talk about ASEAN, also you need to understand that culturally, we don't see the young people talking about it, or when you speak to young people, ask them little something about ASEAN, they can tell you very little apart from how many countries are in the bloc. how is he going to push this forward? So, talking about these tough issues.
So that's the thing, right? So ASEAN is old, 1967. Whereas everything else that we speak about, whether it's BRICS 2015 or whether CPTPP, RCEP, all these being in the last 5 years. So I think that freshness is what PMX is trying to bring into the ASEAN narrative in the first place. Again, we are managing a very heterogeneous group. We are not managing countries of equal standing. We are managing countries, say for example, the ASEAN 10, Singapore has got a GDP of $90,000, whereas if we use the CMLV countries, the Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, we are talking about 2,000 CML. $2,000. No, the Vietnam has now become 4. That's last time it was CMLV. So Vietnam has become 4. So they're growing economies. So in many ways, that disparity, that heterogeneous group is what PMX needs to bring onto the table. To me, I don't think they need to solve everything. Sixth time we are becoming ASEAN chair. The last was in 2015. So one good thing is, when we became ASEAN chair in 2015, it was when we established the ASEAN Economic Community, the AEC. So that's 10th year milestone in 2025. I think economic narrative is what Dato Sri Anwar will push at the beginning itself.
Right. Having said what you've said, we have major forums like the East Asia Summit and the ASEAN Regional Forum, all supposed to talk about important things like security, trade, so on and so forth. But they haven't been very active in the past few years. Now, do you think Malaysia could help bring some energy to these platforms? I mean, pulling people together to talk about trade and security. Trade is very interesting. Security, everyone likes to come to the table, but what's in it for me?
So again, I think most of these countries, especially with Trump in office, I think everybody now will become, very, very nationalistic.
Right.
So they will guard their sovereignty, but they will work with the regional trade blocs, ASEAN included. So in that way, again, we'll have to see what is the trade-off. Now, why so much of interest in South China Sea, or why so much of interest in ASEAN as such? Simply because nearly a third of all global trade passes across Straits of Malacca into the South China Sea, and China has to play this role. I mean, we keep every day in the news there is something about China encroaching into some waters of some country, and everybody getting a bit upset about it. But that's primarily simply because 90% of oil from the Middle East goes through the Straits of Malacca, past the South China Sea to China. So they are very dependent, the Oriental countries, Japan included, South Korea included. So in that way, they have to guard this very strategic route in terms of trade and oil, because the energy security and economic growth is very, very important to these countries.
Right. See, when you talk about energy security, that has to be balanced out with our ambitions with regards to net zero, so on and so forth.
With Trump in office, you can forget about it. Right?
So you can forget about so he's saying now, drill, baby, drill. That's what that's
his theme. And what I think I just read today morning somewhere that Elon Musk has bet $130 million if I'm not mistaken. So the biggest beneficiary of all this would be actually all these old school energy companies,
right?
That push towards net zero, climate change, green energy.
Right.
They kind of take a back seat.
Right.
But I think maybe there'll be a fresher approach to all this.
Now with Trump back, now let's talk about economic opportunities and challenges for ASEAN in 2025. With Trump back, we might see some shifts in global trade. Now, what do you think Malaysia can do to help ASEAN stay resilient in the face of any big changes? Also, I mean, a lot of ASEAN leaders have been coming up and talking about Trump's win. I'll talk about that shortly. But going back to Trump being in the driver's seat again, how can Malaysia help us or ASEAN as a bloc to stay resilient in the face of any big changes? And I'm sure with Trump coming in, he's going to, big changes would mean I'm going to say something now and everyone's going to listen. And when he talks about ASEAN, I'm sure he's going to say something to rattle us a little bit.
So, it's already started, right? It's not taken office yet. So, I think, again, like I said, we won't be feeling the brunt of it, but we will get the heat from there. Simply, when you look at what Jerome Powell said. Is he going to take you out of office? He said, no, he can't take me out of office, and it's not constitutionally possible. So this standoff is basically going to mark the 2025 for us and for the rest of the world. So even if you look at the trade war that's going to happen between China, all that slapping of tariffs, where he said, look, I'm going to impose 30%, 40%.
Right.
So that whole 30-40%, if you look at China's exports to US, many of the banks have done this study, and they said the elasticity, so-called, if there is 1% increase in tariffs, US imposes, there's 1.7% reduction in exports from China. So if he's going to slap 30%, now China has to look for a near 40% new markets. As it is, the China's government stimulus, which was announced just a couple of weeks ago and is still ongoing, it kind of comes in installment, that has basically got very lukewarm support from the global investment community. So in many ways, the ones who need to be very worried is actually China. We, on the other hand, like you mentioned just now, the challenges are there, but there's also those opportunities. So the China plus one, we would be a big beneficiary of the China plus one strategy, in terms of now there is a clear alternate to China, and that market is what we should be able to
I'll actually digress to SMEs in a short while. If you're just joining us on the program, this is the Nation Asean Plus. Joining us on the show is Dr. A.T. KUMARARAJAH. He's got a lot to say about a lot of things that are happening around the world. Of course, with regards to what's happening in our neck of the woods, sometimes it's really hard to navigate discussions about that, but we'll try anyhow. Let's just take a look at news this week. Okay, economic policies. Trump's likely America First policies could reduce US manufacturing in Southeast Asia, affecting FDI in sectors like electronics and apparel across countries such as Vietnam and us here in Malaysia. Now, when you talk about regional security, ASEAN countries may face strategic challenges in if the US decreases its defense role, particularly in the South China Sea, which could empower China's stance. Now, all this news or all these little factoids are coming in from this week alone, just after him winning. Now, climate and energy concerns is the other big thing. ASEAN nations pushing for renewable energy may see less US climate cooperation under Trump, prompting them to diversify partnerships. Where can they go to? And also supply chain realignment. ASEAN stands to benefit from companies shifting production out of China, yet new US tariffs could influence future investments. And when you talk about tariffs, I keep saying it like it's a verbal tick. But when you talk to people within SMEs, just yesterday making a few phone calls, people are worried that prices are going to fluctuate, things are going to be different. There's going to be a time for readjustment once again. Yeah.
So again,
and next year's the year of the snake.
Yeah. So look at where the dollar is headed, right? So we kind of did very well, and we were very best performing this year. But eventually, 2025 again going to see moderation. So we're going to pull back, so claw back some of these benefits that we saw from the stronger ringgit for this year. So the dollar is going to get a bit more stronger next year, which primarily again means export benefits, but again making SMEs. So SMEs in this picture, again look at ASEAN, Gerard. Why I mentioned that heterogeneity is simply because SMEs contribute anywhere between 30 to 50%. Whether you talk about GDP or whether you talk about employment, you say Indonesia, for example. We speak about the 680 million population of ASEAN 10. Nearly 45% of that, close to 250 million, is from Indonesia itself. So in many ways, but then SMEs provide 97% of employments there. In Malaysia, we provide half. Of the 15 million employed in this country, we provide only half. But SMEs provide 97%, near full employment for everybody who's employed in the private sector. So this is the nuances, or this is the granular things that we need to manage going forward next year. And I think what Trump will do, Trump probably would not get into the granular aspects. Right. These huge changes that is going to happen, again, it's very hard to say what he said during campaign and what's really going to happen next year.
Yeah, but Trump 1.0 told us that he'll make broad sweeping statements and everyone will have to read
in between the lines, and the reality may be a little bit different from what he's mentioned, because I think we have seen it both in our local politics and also in America. I think everything that they say during elections or leading up to elections not necessarily gets translated into policies.
Now, of course, with ASEAN, the push I think next year is towards digital and green industries, and Malaysia has to help lead the way on these new economic frontiers. Now, with digital industries, that's a foregone conclusion that that's the way we want to go. That's our true
That's the
north.
only way to go.
Yeah, green industries is going to be trickier for us. Should we be talking? Yeah, should we be talking about that?
Yes, because I think the green investments,
ASEAN?
the green investments, the sustainability, these are not immediate term. They are medium to long term. So the Trump presidency is 4 years. So we cannot set our sails to something that's going to happen in the next 4 years, knowing that we have made long-term commitments to net zero, for example. So we're looking at what, 2030, 2050. So this episode will be over by 2030. Moving forward, the world eventually will change their qiblat towards new energy. It's already there. It's just that now the path becomes a bit maybe slower.
Yeah. I mean,
but then US is not a big investor in terms of new energy. In that way, our natural partners would be all these.
So, but you have to think that what he's telling us now is, I don't care about renewable energy. It's not my thing.
Yes.
You know, we drill wherever if we have to go to the most remote parts of the world and drill, we are going to
get petrol prices cheaper.
Yeah. Yep. So petrol prices will go cheaper. But then on the other side, we must not forget the EU and Japan. You know, they're also, partners to us, trading partners to us. Now, how will this play out?
EU is the sick man in the room. In this whole equation, you only mentioned EU once, right? So I mentioned it once. You must understand, EU has kind of lost its shine in many ways. So EU is the sick man in the room.
Shine or Qiblat? Which one?
So in that way, the European Union won't make much of a change, but I think the Oriental countries, Japan will be another big beneficiary. Everything that's going to happen outside of China's this trade war is going to benefit the larger world.
Right. So should Malaysia, if you say EU has lost its shine, should Malaysia, being the chair of ASEAN, work on a partnership with the EU to strengthen our partnership with the EU and Japan next year?
I mean,
Japan
we
has
will
always
look towards the east.
Yeah.
We will certainly look towards the east. I think we will definitely strengthen our partnership with Japan, South Korea. Again, work on RCEP. But I think the PMX is very, very clear. BRICS is the way to go. So next year he will double down on us being a very neutral nation. You know, and then Russia is going to become the chair for next year. So I think you just imagine, we have got Trump in presidency, we have got Russia, who's the chair of BRICS, happening next year. Our partnership is near ready, and maybe full membership at some point in time in the near future. So I think PMX has got his work cut out for him, and I'm sure he will do very, very well. Not only for us as a nation, but then ASEAN itself.
Right. So he'll have to read between the lines and know where.
I think we're also good in that way. We are fortunate that we have got this experience in him. I think he has done very well in the international arena, while he has done fairly well also in the domestic landscape. But he has done very well as a statesman for our nation, as a spokesman for the nation, for the country.
Thank you very much for joining us right here on the Nation ASEAN Plus. GERARD Ratnam with you. Joining us in studio is Dr. A.T. KUMARARAJAH. Joining us from Johor now via phone is Nordin Abdullah. And now we'll move into social and security priorities for ASEAN. Nordin's on the phone. Nordin, my question to you is this. ASEAN's faced some serious humanitarian issues like the crisis in Myanmar. We talked about that earlier. Now, how could Malaysia help lead ASEAN towards a more unified stance on these kind of challenges? That's the elephant in the room. That's going to have to be addressed at some point next year. How can Malaysia make this less painful and help us at least move forward, even if it means inch forward? Noted.
Well, thank you, Gerard. It's always good to be on air with both of you. I think one of the things that Malaysia as chairman needs to present, and of course Datuk mentioned it earlier, Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim has done the hard work and met with all the ASEAN leaders. But I think when we talk about humanitarian assistance, humanitarian realities within ASEAN, I think the first and most important goal that we should hit is eradication of hardcore poverty. And in the last 2 years, Malaysia has made very good steps towards actually getting there. For an ASEAN country, we're very close to hitting that zero hardcore poverty. And I think that should be the benchmark in which we measure ourselves against our neighbors. And then we'll have the street cred, as it were, to say, look, we've done this internally. Now we can take on a bigger role around the region, and if we can get this zero poverty agenda throughout ASEAN, it's something that it impacts the region, but it also each and every member state will then have a role to play. So if Malaysia can take that as a leadership initiative, and I think the Prime Minister is able to do that, together with the ASEAN Plus partners like China, US, Canada, Australia, India, of course, this agenda can really play out.
AT, you'd like to comment on that?
Yeah, so again, I think Nordin is spot on that, right? So I think what the PMX will eventually do is pick up on some of these things that he can deliver. It's not going to all happen, everything in 2025. 2025 is not the end all of everything else, right? So he'll have to pick up on, say, 3 top things that he wants to deliver. And economy, in that, one of that being poverty eradication, would be very much on that agenda. I think it's an economy, right? So the US elections very clearly showed anything can happen, but it's the economy end of the day.
Right. Now, the other thing, Nordin, and I would like to bring Nordin back on, there's so much movement across ASEAN borders for work, but migration can be tricky. Now, this is going to be something we need to work. So if we're talking about SMEs, if we're talking about bringing industries up, which means we need to move people around ASEAN. Now, how can Malaysia push for fair treatment and support of migrant workers and people who are moving about the bloc or from the bloc countries to work and to up the economy, so to speak?
Well, when we think about it, Malaysians themselves, of course, a few 100,000 are across the border in Singapore, and we see this as part of Malaysia as part of Singapore's talent equation. So when we start to think of it as a talent and not just workers, and we start to look at ASEAN being a destination for investors, of course, are now looking at global market access, but really what they're looking at is access to global talent at the right price. And it's the right type of talent. 20, 30 years ago, we just needed people who could, manufacture, assemble things. The world has moved on, and now Malaysia, again, while its chairman needs to put out to the world, hey, we've moved on. We're no longer the low-cost solution, but we are the best solution in terms of getting their hands on the right type of talent that will drive your global business and your global supply chain. Right.
Nordin, we'd like to thank you. We hope to have you in the studios at some point to join in the discussion. That was Nordin Abdullah, currently in Johor Bahru. We hope to have him back when he's back in the federal capital at some point. Thank you very much, Nordin. Dato', just to round this up and to bring this home, now, what are your thoughts on us, the checklist we need to look at before we get into 2025 proper and before we take on ASEAN at the helm?
I think basically what's our unified voice? What's the ASEAN consensus? I think if PMX can bring that ASEAN consensus back in terms of what is it that we mean as a nation of 10 countries, what is it that we mean to both global trade, geopolitical landscape of this of the world, and what does it really mean in terms of moving the needle forward? In that way, if we can get that consensus back in place, I think we're really home with it. And I think PMX is very much able to do that because the optics are all so good so far. So I think we will land end 2024 in a very good note to ramp up to 2025 and good landing for us.
Right. For those in the business world right now who are a bit unsure about what's going to happen given the political changes around the world and how it will affect trade, especially intercontinental trade, so on and so forth, what would be your advice to?
I think the solution is very, very clear. In a very bleak outlook also, Southeast Asia stands up as one of those bright spots. So to me, Southeast Asia is where the action is because we have a lot of growing economy. We've got a fairly robust population, and I think we will be home because we have got the right strategic one geographically and also our workings that we have with the rest of the world.
Dr. A.T., it was a pleasure having you in the studio. Always a pleasure having you here to sort of shed light on issues happening in the country and outside the country. And we'd also like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us right here on the Nation ASEAN Plus. I'm GERARD. Thank you very much for staying with us on Bernama TV. More news updates coming your way. If you need updates via radio, go to 93.9. For long reads or long form reads, go to bernama.com for all the news that you need. This has been the Nation ASEAN Plus on Bernama TV. Take care and have a fantastic weekend. Bye-bye.